Thank you for coming. Thank you for signing in. Looks like we got 3 remote, which is good. This is one of those projects that I've had. I cut my teeth on Planetary, and I was kind of surprised at how many people were mystified, never touched it, etc. Because I found it really, I mean, this was a lot of fun, and it was kind of easy to do once you got the hang of a few key pieces. So I had the idea in my head for a bit. And with that, I guess we'll kind of get started. I'm your speaker. If you're not looking at cameras, is Jeff Kopmanis. I'm a lowbrow, as you can probably see from the numerous paraphernalia around. I'm the online coordinator for the Lowbrows Club, which probably all know that. I worked at the University of Michigan, and I'm an IT web, let's see, what is it, the title? A senior web developer. And it means that I'm in a dark, dark corner of the university, and I have a little spare time on my hands every now and then. So with that, there we go.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes.
Where were you parked on Wednesday?
Where was I?
Where were you parked? Were you parked on campus on Wednesday?
Oh, I work from home, so my car was dry.
Oh,
I did get a picture of that, and that was quite thrilling to see somebody standing up on the middle of the median and watching the muddy water all over the place. For those who didn't catch the joke, it's the Palmer Street structure nearby here was the lower floors anyway were pretty much underwater. So
really,
lots of cars flooded and everything. I was to say thank you for coming and being interested in this. And I'm going to say that the first thing is everything that I'm going to yak about and probably get wrong is in this book here by Charles Bracken. Right now it's in its 3rd edition. I read through the 2nd edition every single page, and it's a positively wonderful book. The 3rd edition, which is kind of pricey, I think it said $46 or something there. It's been updated with the latest CMOS cameras, so they got finally off of CCD exclusively, and it's got stuff for both Photoshop and PixInsight, and they might even mention GIMP in there. So, and fantastic book and well worth reading. They explain everything from cameras to the bits and bytes of everything to general techniques for deep sky. Now, it is definitely a deep sky book. But there's nothing in there that we can't, apply to Planetary. Planetary is just this, but only faster. So with that said, that's a great book, and I highly recommend checking it out if you're doing any kind of astrophotography at all. So why are we here? We're here to turn, icky images like this one on the left, this raw image, and that's a single frame from the SARE file. The Jupiter SARE file, actually. We're going to turn that, and we're going to learn how to stack things, and then finally to sharpen and polish it, so we end up with this pretty image on the right. And I will say that the image on the right is probably not as good as I've gotten playing around and testing some stuff. So there's a few little tweaks to the procedures I got in here, but I left the pictures the same because you want to look at them. So that's kind of the basic idea. And we're basically going to cover how to stack things in serial. Kind of talk about the capture strategy, which is, it seems like it's a little reversed, but until you know what you're stacking, the capture strategy doesn't make any sense really, or the reasons why. So I kind of reversed those for that reason. And once you get it stacked, then there's sharpening, there's color enhancements, there's alignments, and there's lots of other things you can do. And some of those are in serial, some of them are in GIMP, or frankly, this Linux box that I've got in here has got a fabulous little photo viewer that has enough editing to do most of that too. So I would say GIMP is a great tool because it's got everything you possibly ever need in there. But for our purposes, it's not strictly required. But if you need something advanced, yeah, it's a good tool and it's free. So all the stuff that I have here that I gave to you on the sheets and whatnot It's all free software available just for the download. I didn't want to, draw anybody in and make any sales pitches or stuff like that. So
one quick question.
Sure.
This is going to end up on our website, right?
Yeah. The recording that we're doing, which I should double check to make sure it's recording. I've done that before. Screen sharing. No, it is recording. It says it is, so that's good. I've been guilty of that in the past. So that recording, I'm gonna edit out the beginning and endings like I normally do for the Lowbrows, and it'll be online on YouTube either tomorrow or I don't know, over the weekend, something like that. So anyway, that's where we're at with this. I mentioned before the two tools we're going to be looking over is Serial, and I'll probably spend most of the time in Serial. The GIMP, I just put it out there because it does do all of the image tweaks and other things. It really is like it's an optional piece, but it is useful if you really need to do some of that stuff. All of the alignment, the registration of the images, stacking, the sharpening, all that stuff they've included in Serial. And only recently in, I think the version 1.2 in December, did they include all of the Planetary stuff. So that was kind of a surprise to me. And thank you to the Detroit Observatory docents and staff for pointing that out to me. It's like, oh, wow, I hadn't looked at it in a little while. And once I dug in and figured it out, it's like, yeah, actually, this is going to be a good tool to use for this workshop. So thank you again. So stacking, really grossly put, this is just literally adding images together, one on top of each other. And when you do that, you basically are collecting values for those pixels and making them brighter. It has the effect of kind of averaging things. And due to the construction of, well, anyway, the CMOS cameras for sure, but most cameras, they've got these A to D converters, analog to digital converters for each pixel. And they basically do, the basic adding when photons arrive at the sensor. And based on, these are 12-bit things. So if you add up each of the 12 bits, you'll, get a percentage type value here. And that's the basic gist of how the sensors work. And I'm sure that there's some technical stuff that I'm completely glossing over or getting completely wrong, but it's a nice way to think about it. That's why for this, I just like, let's give that. So if we're looking for a color value of some sort in this pixel, which the pixels are basically going to be a red, green, or blue pixel if you have a one-shot color camera, and then usually an extra green or red, depending on the camera design. Those pixels will pick up this 83% value. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you an 83 out of 100 on this pixel. And based on what color you have, that's what color the pixel will appear in your computer. Similarly, if it's only 17%, it's going to be pretty dim and it'll probably be, a lower intensity value, same process. So, and basically with this stacking thing, once you start stacking stuff, you're going to find that everything gets amplified. So all of the signal, the stuff you want is going to appear brighter. And because the additive and I guess subtractive quality of the thing, it is associative properties in math. Ooh, wow, there it comes. Some of that noise is going to get reduced at the same time because you'll have maybe on one frame, you'll have a dark pixel for say 10 frames, and only one pixel will have a piece of noise or, a satellite or something on it. So over time, all the good stuff you want tends to be very consistent and it'll kind of rise to the top. So, collecting these frames, well, naturally, the more frames you get, the better picture you're going to have. The more frames you collect, the better your signal to noise ratio will be. And that's the whole thing. But there's kind of a balance to that. So, how many you choose, which you choose, that's where things kind of turn from science into art. There's no formula. I've looked for those. Early on, it's like, well, there's got to be some guideline. Now, I can tell you that, Jupiter on a clear day will be different than Jupiter on a hazy day. And Jupiter will be very different from Saturn and Mercury or Mars, excuse me, and virtually every other planet. So it's like they all are kind of unique. Even the exposure and gain settings, they might change depending on your situation. So kind of getting a feel for your camera and everything is also kind of part of that artsy, nondescript portion of it. So we have our basic strategy, capture lots of frames. That's a great thing, but well, like everything, there's a catch. Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, they're relatively close and they spin pretty fast. So in taking your photos or whatever, within 3 minutes time, your camera will be able to pick up differences in the planet's rotation. So generally 3 minutes is about the time limit you have to take frames. So this lots of frames thing, that means you got to do it within 3 minutes per shot. So video that's the reason we got SAR files and not FITS files. So you can convert them back and forth. But we capture video because it's the fastest way to get stuff to your disk or your SSD or whatever you're storing it on. And the internal formats take care of all the frame issues and stuff. We, in the astronomy people, they tend to like the FITS and SAR formats because they both have a lot of metadata possibilities. So they'll store automatically all kinds of stuff about what exposure time you had, what gain settings you had, what camera type you had, even date time, all that kind of stuff is all in the metadata. So it's really valuable for various programs to deal with that. I just realized, excuse me 1 minute. Make sure this thing doesn't go to sleep on me. By the way, this laptop I'm using is positively ancient. We'll go for the performance setting here. So the next little catch is that, well, you're capturing frames as fast as you can and all that in your 3 minute time frame. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I've got this big frame of stuff and it's capturing down, megabytes every second, basically. And so, your frame per second, like this resolution camera here, the 5496, that maxes out around 18, 19 frames per second. And this is a real figure. That's off of my camera. But if you do, and they call it region of interest or your field of view, the programs have a lot of different terms. Mine tends to use region of interest. If you cut that down to what will hold, say, Jupiter or Saturn in a frame and allow for some movement in the mount, the sky, a little bit of wiggle here and there, then you can cut that down significantly. And you can see I get 103, and that's a lot better. And I measured it out, and Jupiter is good for about 1024 square on my camera anyway. And your cameras are going to vary depending on what you're using. I think this is when we're going to do our first switch over to the laptop. And so I brought up the SAR player, and this is typically what you're going to see in the video. Guys at home, see the video okay? Yes, let's loop that. So.
I don't see any video.
See a shimmery Jupiter?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
It probably takes some time to get across, but you'll see
Maybe because I'm in Oregon, that's why.
Yeah. You see the moon there, it comes and goes. Sometimes it's very clear and sometimes it's just a fuzzy mess. Things are jumping around, and that's mainly due to the atmosphere of the Earth floating by. I was liken it to, it's like you're looking through a stream of water at a rock. The rock will seem to shimmer and move. And we're seeing exactly the same effect with the atmosphere in the sky. But you'll see that like the moon clarifies, the great spot sometimes will disappear completely and other times it'll show up. And sometimes you get these brilliant clear moments that are just fantastic. And it's like, well, that is obviously one of my good frames that I got. We want to keep those. That's going to float to the top of our quality ratings and whatnot. And some of the other ones, yeah, they're not so good, so let them be. Most of the programs, if not all of them nowadays, they also account for satellites coming through. So our Starlink friends, we won't have problems with them if we use the stacking programs because they see that as a very bad quality shot that has some noise in it that is, spectacular. So they usually toss those out. But I wanted to show this because this is kind of our starting point. And this is what you'll get off of whether it's fire capture or sharp cap or any of them. I know that Ami used sharp cap for this video here, but this is typically what you get. I can show you the other two files since we have some file issues going on here. I separated mine into directories just because it's easier to get around. And so the Saturn here is notably messy because, well, it's a lot smaller object in your camera. And it's going to be more affected by all that. It's also not as clear. It's a lot more pixelated and whatnot. You see it really jumbles around. It's amazing. Our last one. Oops. Is Mars. And Mars, this is an interesting one because the whole disk isn't wavering, but because it's smaller yet, it just jumps around all over the place. And that's why I mentioned with the region of interest, you want to have a square that's big enough to capture it when it's doing all this juggling around. And this is all tracked with the mount, or at least I don't think you can do guided tracking yet with Planetary. And there's no need to really. The programs.
That's still better than over the many decades I've looked at it visually that I've seen sometimes.
Yeah, well, and this is one of those points that the visual astronomers and the imagers. This is I look at imaging as the same as like lenses in a telescope. Imaging is a tool that you can use to better your view of what's up there. Even if you're looking with your eyeball through lenses, you're still using a tool to make a better view of what you're seeing in the sky because we can't see it with our naked eye. So I kind of take issue with some ultra religious visual guys, but I don't despair them or disparage them at all. But I look at this as this is the tool of my day, and it's a tool that you can use. So with that, we'll get back to our talk here. So as you can see, the your camera specs in the previous slide with a different frame per seconds and all that can make a big difference in the raw image quality that you're going to get. As jumpy and whatnot as they be, obviously good mount and all that's kind of a given. And we talked, faster the speed, the more frames you're going to collect in that magic 3 minutes. And, you can do the, look them up in the charts. It might be that Saturn, is not a problem. Maybe you can get, 3.5 minutes or something, but we're still talking, relatively short amounts of time. Mars doesn't change very often. So, okay, maybe 4 minutes, but you'll still be able to detect them. And after you stack them, if you have rotation going on, that will blur your image and all your stacking efforts will be for naught. So it's important to make sure that you keep within those lines. The resolution of your camera, I've had really, really good luck. And I think Bracken probably makes a note, and there's some fancy math formulas on there. But basically, if you try to match your camera resolution to how fine a resolution your telescope gets. And this was just a rough formula here that I found, actually on Google, I think. I just made a quick estimate that my 8-inch telescope, my Celestron, is going to give me about 1 degree. north of view. The SCTs are typically very small in degrees, and using the calculations and all that, I came up with about 3,600 arc seconds, which means that anything sensor that's above 3,600 pixels wide or high, it's probably just going to buy you extra black space. So going, above those resolutions, and you can go to any of the camera sites. They generally don't go very high unless you're talking about really big telescopes and stuff, and then they will get higher resolutions. But naturally, the price goes up significantly at that time as well. The efficiency I only mentioned because that's one of those factors that they like putting on the ads. But I kind of look at it as like this is a measure of how sensitive and maybe. Yeah, I hate to overuse the word efficient, but how efficient that sensor is going to be. And in the example here, it basically says, if you got 100% or 100 photons, and you squirt 75 of the photons that it captures on there, and it manages to capture 75 of them, then you've got 75% efficiency. Obviously, the closer to 100% you are, the better off you are. But you're not going to get there. My camera is, I believe it's around 80% efficient, and it does a pretty good job. So anything modern, modern cameras within the last 5 years, you're probably going to be good in shape. The other thing that I discovered accidentally was this idea of the pixel well sizes. And the pixel well is, there's memory that has to hold this stuff no matter what. My Planetary camera has got a smaller pixel size. And so, the light is spread out further on the sensor. Whereas if you have bigger pixels, more photons are going to enter that bucket. So that you might need a deeper pixel well if you have bigger pixels. Like I mentioned these two figures here, my 2.4 Planetary camera has got a 15K well, and it never, I hardly ever saturate unless I'm doing something a little stupid. Likewise, my DSO camera has got larger pixels and it's very sensitive, but it's also got a 40K or 65K well. This 2.9 came from the two example cameras I got later. And you want to avoid saturation. You'll get stinky pictures every time. Hence the poopy emoji. This is my Planetary camera just for talking points. You notice the 12-bit A to D converter. Just about all of them are 12-bit. Some of them go up. This is the 15K pixel well. And you'll notice that 19, that's there because it's a slow camera, but it's because the resolution is so high. And I did that because it matches up with my 8-inch scope really well. And I've had very good luck with this camera. You see the efficiencies and all that, they drop off after a while. And this is what does they say, 80% efficiency goes for. It's not for sale anymore. So if you try to look for it, this is kind of the successor. And you see they went with slightly larger pixels, and they stay around the 3,600. But the quantum efficiency is up. They've also got a larger pixel well, and look at that speed, 46, and that is full resolution. So things have come along, and you can see in the graph here, things don't taper off until a lot further down the lines. It's capturing more wavelengths for a long period of time. So that I just put those up because it's like these are some of the figures that you'll see on ZWO's website. I have ZWO cameras, the QNY. There's a couple of new brands that I just noticed in the magazines. So, any questions up to this point? I think we're going to jump over to the display now. So you're either bored silly or it's like, this guy's nuts. Yeah, I'm going to use my own cheat sheet. So stacking. This is serial. It's got a ton of functionality. There's lots of different functions it can do. The things we're going to be worried about is basically how a subset of that for the planetary. Serial's got a weird notion about its home directory. It likes working in one spot. The first thing you do is obviously you want to set up where it's going to be working. We're going to work on the Jupiter one first. I put these things into subdirectories just to kind of keep everything together as it works. And this is just selecting the folder. So I'm going to say we're going to work on the Jupiter. When we go to Saturn or something, we'll change that. And now we get to open our file. Actually, this is a weird thing about Serial. You can either open a file and do a whole bunch of stuff, or you can use their conversion tab and do pretty much the same thing, but with a lot less effort. So I kind of direct our instructions to go that route since it's going to do a bunch of stuff all in one pan. So we're going to pick out the file. It's in Jupiter, our working thing. I'm going to add that, and you can see it's adding up here. It's got the size, which is relatively small. Yeah, sequence. Name. Have to give it a name. Sequence. Get these things messed up. Oh, yeah. Forgot something. I think I erased something along the way. Wow. Not cool. We're just going to say, oops. On keyboard. And we are going to set it to generate a SARE sequence. And the debayer, this is remember I mentioned that you got red, green, and blue pixels and color cameras anyway. If you're using monochrome, then I guess don't worry about this stuff. But there's always a fourth pixel because it's in a group of 4. And the debayering is basically going to take account for that other pixel and get rid of it. Or you map it in properly. It should getting rid of it is probably bad. So yeah, name it, SARE sequence, debayer, and we'll just do the convert here. Name the sequence. Okay, step 4, I did say that. I think we'll, yeah, we'll update that sheet. And you can see it's going through the file here. The nice thing about using a really slow computer is that you can kind of see what happens. It's pretty nice. Okay. So once we got, this is basically, we've read in the file, it knows about all the images that are in that SARE file. It hasn't really expanded them open at all, which we can look in that Jupiter. It's made a copy of some things here, and there's some indexes and whatnot, but that's basically this workshop Jupiter, that's the one. And then there's a sequence file. So this is what Serial is doing on the backside for us. Expand that a little bit since we know how big our images are. So our next step is like we've got to tell Serial and the program and let it get a chance to analyze each of these images for quality and whatnot, so we know how we're going to stack this thing. And they do that through the registration tab. The one thing I always forget, and I've done this a couple of times on my own and one in the demo as well, that we did, we all met the observatory staff, and we went through this on first. So I forgot to do this, and it came out, it stacked, but it produced all kinds of weird errors, and it's like, what's going on here? Got to remember to select the area. And of course, you want to include, any moons that are here as well. And it's going to basically pay attention to this area when it's doing the registration. You have to choose one of the methods. And I think that is up in, is that image pattern alignment? Where'd it go? There it is. So there you see there's a number of deep sky things, and there's really only two of the planetary ones, and those are both here. I've tried both of them, and I can't tell which is, they seem to produce the same result, so we're not going to worry about that. And from here, we just hit go, and we let it go. You see down, we got a little bit of a progress bar, and it's going through a gazillion different frames. And we're basically waiting for the results to come back when it finishes up. And the important thing here is this best frame. They even put it in bold faces. So number 787. I think I'm going to write that down just because I can't. And if we forgot to put the square around there, the best image will be kind of randomized. And that's where it's kind of important to get that one right. And if we want to kind of see, what it's done, we can go back to this sequence. And this is kind of a place where you look through, if you've got numerous files for your dark sky site at different days and times and things, this is where you would put that. In our case, we've got one file. It's got a zillion frames in it. We don't care. But it has this marvelous thing here. We open it up. And this will show us in detail where all of our frames are. I like to sort them by qualities, get some idea. The first frame here was actually the absolute worst, it looks like. And if we go to the end, oops, all the way up to the top. And this is frame 787, as we see. So we select that one and tell it, this is the best frame that we got. Let's use that as a reference for all the other activity we're going to do. That's an important step. I missed that one time too. And once we mark that, then we can dispose of the frame list, get rid of it, it doesn't matter. It knows about which one is our good image. And you can always come back to these or leave them up. Serial seems to be very forgiving when it comes to windows that are up and about. This is just a listing, so it really doesn't do anything. And then we're going to go back to our stacking tab. And oh, I forgot, there is a plot. And in Auto Stacker, one of the other programs, and I'm just going to do a brief stack of that at the end. But it shows you these graphs, and this is like your quality rating here, and you can see, roughly half of the frames, maybe a little less, are falling above the 50% quality rating. Now, if you remember, our top rating was, 1.0 percentage, and frame 787 was at that 1.0. After that is like, you get successively poorer and poorer frames. These graphs I have trouble making sense of, but it gives you an idea of what your data is looking like. So we have, poor versus, better at the end. Maybe the clouds were in better shape here, or the air was a little more still. It's really kind of hard to say without going frame by frame and seeing what was going on. So we go back to our stacking tab. Again, you can do different stacking here. The sum stacking, it seems to work. It's the default, and it's what all the videos say. It's the one to start. And here's kind of the fun part here. And all of the serial menus, I can say they all have really good hover help here. So we're going to be interested in sorting the quality, because I mentioned before, is like there's some cruddy stuff that we don't want to bother with. By default, it says 90%. That's almost laughable. You'll get a big smeary mess if you use that. I think a good place to start is 15%. And it'll tell you, okay, this is 901 of the one. Yeah, that 15%. So I think we went even down to 10. That would give us, roughly, 10%. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? But this is your quality rating that you want it to be greater than. So it's like, that's around the, what's 78 and a half. So around the 80% mark or so that you're taking like the top. Well, in this case, 10%, but that 10% is all going to be pretty good rankings. In Serial and other programs, you can always label them however you like, because they're going to have the prefixes of everything on top of things. It really doesn't matter. So with that, we just hit the stacking button, and we can watch things happen. This is where the slower PC is not so good, because the other one screams through this stuff. What are you doing? Oh, because I only had 100 frames. We can also bump that up to 15 and rerun it if it's going to be that fast. Yeah, it did. Okay. Yeah, 151 is a little better. So maybe 15%. And it shows you the result right here. We can also open up that other file. Oh, it only shows you the last one. Okay. Never mind. It'll show you your stacked result. And you can see that that appears as that fits file or fit file in here. And that's the stacked. It will add its own prefix to it. So that's actually the stacking piece. I can flip back to the presentation for a second here. The stacking is like, okay, that's improved, but it's nothing to write home about. It's not worth any letter home or whatnot, but it is an improvement, and we see more detail than we saw with the raw, and it's not wiggling all over the place. One thing that I didn't get in the habit of doing right away, but I'm kind of in thinking about it after the fact, aligning for your color is going to be a good thing to do right away. And of course, they've got nice tools to do it. And I'm going to switch back the laptop real quick. While we've got this thing up and it's selected, we can just do a right click and down here on the alignment. And you see they've got a planetary and deep sky pattern alignment. Hey, that's what I want. And that will basically align your colors. You won't see any difference on Jupiter because he must have done something to align the colors in his camera and stuff ahead of time. But actually on the presentation thing, the reason you do that is because if you notice here, along this edge up here, it's got kind of a blue haze to it. And down along this edge, it's got a red haze, which means the colors aren't aligned. And after you use the tool, you can see those characteristics just fade away. And, some of the features, like here, you got a little bit of red showing. That's all much clearer now. So that's a reason to align before you start trying to sharpen or doing anything else. And since we mentioned that, I guess I can go on while I'm back on the screen. This is the wavelets tool, and it has a strange name in the menu. So I'm going to just this is the menu you're looking for. As I'm pointing to my screen and yours. And this is the true magic where, and I've said this before, where it's like, okay, we stack stuff, and you'll get a sense of whether you've got good data or bad data. If the atmosphere was really cruddy that day, it might be that after you stack, it's like none of these are worth spending any more time on. Some of them might be better than others, and that's generally where I start playing with things. Is once I see, oh, that one looks particularly clear, let's shoot for that one first. Well, like this Saturn image here, it's like That's not too bad because I'm already seeing some stripes and some, you know, cloud detail up along the poles and whatnot. So it's like, okay, that's workable. But if it's just a hazy, you know, blurry mess, then it means that there was some dirty data, that maybe we chose too much data along the way, whatever it might be. But this wavelet tool, this is a sharpening tool. And instead of just like in your Photoshop, for instance, you'll have sharpness and you have a single slider and you slide it back and forth and it sharpens the entire image all at once. With this wavelet tool, you're sharpening a number of pixels in a sized block at a time. So you can go from very broad to very fine with each level of that. And that is magic. And that's what turns, you know, something blurry and icky into something, you know, reasonably nice. I'm using Saturn in my slide. And with that, I'll switch back over. Because this is the fun part. I can't say how many times. So under the image processing, obviously there's some French people involved because, or Portuguese, I have no idea what language that is, but key word there is wavelets transform. That's what we want. And you'll get this dialogue here. And you can choose how many levels you want. Traditionally, this actually is nearly a dead copy of what is in the program Registax 6, which kind of brought wavelets into everybody's mind. Registax is currently a 32-bit only program. I couldn't get it to run here, so I can't show you the original. But if you have a normal Windows program that can run either or, you can download it and play with it. It is a Windows-only program. I think it's ancient. Even though it's called Registax, the stacking is arcane and terrible. But it has this marvelous wavelets tool, which the company realized it, or company individuals, whoever, and they've got a new thing called Wave Sharp. And it's not bad, but it only gives you 3 levels of wavelets. And in my experience, you need at least 5 before you can really kind of cut up that image. I don't know why they chose 3. I looked for things to configure it, and it's like 3 is it. But I was pleased to see that Cyril here has 6 levels, because that really is, that's where it shines. I played around and I played with 5, and 5 works just fine. But the first thing you got to do is punch this execute button so it can calculate what it's going to do in the 6 layers. And it doesn't seem to do anything but reset everything to 1. But as I said in the slide before, basically you start with layer 1 and you just start playing with it. And so with each, you see if you overdo it, you get noise and color that you don't want. And you back it off, and they tend to be kind of sensitive, but you basically can mess around with it. You can go 1 at a time, 1 number at a time, which they'll go up by hundreds, which is kind of annoying. But you know, you don't have to basically solve the thing all at once. Forget what I have, but you can. What you're shooting for is like you want to avoid this graininess, and Cyril is kind of nice. Where's the? Is this? Where is it? Oh, there it is. You can zoom in on the image and you can see how grainy this is looking. Hopefully you can see that. That probably means it's over sharpened. And I can't tell you how many times I've found, you know, people who are new at it, they'll sharpen it so that, okay, I can see more detail, but it looks just horrid because it's got all this noise in there. And so we back off a little bit. These sliders are a little sensitive. See, there, it's back to being kind of blurry. You don't get too much pixelization on the edge, and that looks a little more reasonable. Back it off a pinch further. But all of these, none of it is set in stone until you press apply. So you can play with this literally for hours. This is the time-consuming point of the process. But it's also the fun point because you can see the details. So even though I backed off and I haven't made it quite as sharp, it looks better. I'm going to back that off even further. But it basically, when you release your mouse, if you're doing plus and minuses, that's when it seems to recalculate things. Whereas from the slider, it's whenever you release your mouse on the slider. So, okay, that's not bad. Let's go to level 2. And I kind of like seeing, it's like, well, how sensitive is this thing? Well, look at that. Like, that's bringing out a whole lot of detail all of a sudden. But you'll notice it's starting to get grainy again. Back off of that. Sometimes the levels are surprising, whereas like you'll go nuts. Level 1 and 2, I can say you don't have to be very aggressive with them, because just to kind of give away the storyline is like level 3 is where all the magic really happens. Oops. Come on. And you see things are just appearing. And I mean, you can go nuts on it as well. It looks awful that way, but level 3, you bring out all these different colors of clouds, different things here, and you see it's still not super sharp, but we're getting there, you know? And yeah, 20 to 15, something like that. That's not too bad. And then after here, the layers get more sensitive. But they pick up, like you can see the contrast in the brown. It kind of makes it look overexposed, or those kinds of effects. You want to avoid that kind of stuff. And this again is where things get a little artsy, and use your eyeball. Layer 5 is kind of the same way, and in some cases, like here, I backed off to below the 1.0 mark because it just looked bad. Yeah. 4 and 5 are tricky, and 6, if I do anything, it turns it, blurry again. But yeah, sometimes, like, I just need to type in a number, put it back to 1. But that's kind of the idea. And after you get done, mess around. And you can, honestly, you can mess around with this for hours. It's a lot of fun, and I kind of liken each like video set that I've taken is often like a Christmas present, where it's, I can look at it raw and okay, I got a blurry, jiggly mess. I don't know what's going to happen. But until you get to this wavelet stage and start really digging into the image, that's when you might have a surprise present in that mess. And that's where the things really kind of get fun. But yeah, this doesn't look too bad. But once you apply it, you can apply it there. If you don't like it, Serial's got an undo function. Anything you do in Serial, you can undo it immediately, which is, it's a godsend compared to other programs. Some other programs don't do that, and they can be painful. So that's basically it for the sharpening. You can do that, I say, as much time as you want to take. I've gone by, hundredths or tenths, and, a little bit at a time, and kind of massage things. If you do that, you can't go wrong. I'm going to get back to the slide because I didn't write that down in my sheet. Serial's a bit specific about the way you're going to save your results. And there you have to change to this linear mode, which it defaults to, which is great. So yeah, I'm just going to give you the quick things I forgot there. I didn't do this soon enough. I should have run through a complete thing. So back to the laptop. This is the linear control down here. And you can choose all kinds of fun things, and they'll do awful things to your image. I'm sure there's a reason for a lot of that stuff, but if you save it, you'll get, like I say, kind of strange results. Auto stretch. Yeah, that's great. The histogram is like, I'd have to look up to see what that thing does, but basically stick with linear. And then up in here, you can either save it as a fits, which oddly enough, I have not had any good luck saving to a fits image from this point in time. You also notice in the sharpening, this moon gets a lot rounder and more defined. That's one of the nice things about the sharpening too.
Yeah, who's the
Fitz image, I mean, the Fitz image is like a raw image, so it's not this picture, it's all the data, right? So is that why you can't save it as a Fitz? Because you just be saving the same data into another file.
I mean, like I said, I have to look at it, but that kind of makes sense. But I thought, you know, if you're going to be saving it, wouldn't you save what you have on the screen? I don't know. It might be saving the data that you're currently working with without all the filters and all this stuff.
I think what you're seeing on the screen isn't the Fitz file, it's JPEG or PNG.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that. So when you're saving, this little icon right next to the save button is the one you really want to use, because you can save as a different file name. So if you have, say it's like, well, I tried my hand at the wavelets and I got this result, it's not bad, I want to save it. So this is where you can do that anytime, which is great. And maybe something like first try. And that will save it. And I like PNG because they're lossless and they are compressed. They're not as aggressive compressing as like a JPEG or something, but the PNG files have worked well and they're web compatible. So now we save that thing. See, console gives you that, and we can look now in our directory. Oops, we don't want that to happen. And here's our first try image. Oops, I don't want to rename it. I want to open it. Now, it turns out in this variation of Linux, they've got a very fine little tool to show you images and whatnot on your desk. And this is kind of a nice preview. You see there's a little bit of noise here. You can vary like your colors, your saturation. You know, this is the saturation and whatnot. So if you need a little more color, and this is the things that you can do in GIMP or here. But, you know, adding a little bit more color to things, but you can see some of these subtleties go away when you do that saturation thing.
Jeff, you sure that you are sharing your desktop on the Zoom meeting? Because I see only your presentation.
It should have switched over. It's showing the laptop.
Guys, are others on the Zoom? Can you see the program screen, or it's only me?
I can see the program screen.
Oh, something wrong with my...
It may take a while for the program screen switches to go back.
No, it never switches. So I guess I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay, sorry.
With any luck, it'll be in the video. So, and this is just the color adjustment once we're on our final image. So there's not really much there, but you can mess with it here or in GIMP. I'm not going to bother with GIMP because it's more complicated than this simple tool. But if you get these basics and all that, if you want it to be a little more red or something, or if it's maybe looking a little too ruddy, then you can add a little red to it and add some color. Those things are all, you know, up to your eyeball, basically how you want to look at it. And GIMP has these same controls. This is just quick for the display here now. So with that, let me check, see what I got going here. Oh yeah, so maybe we will bring it in again. There's some other things I had. Let's see, yes. I'm gonna go back to the presentation for a sec, just to confuse everybody. Yeah, for the folks at home, the console here, the presentation console, has a feature that it will basically show you anything that's on the screen. So when I switch over, the crowd here sees that switch instantly, but it may take Zoom a while to get you the new screens and stuff. So that's been our experience to date. But anyway, in GIMP, I mentioned, you know, the things we had there, exposure, saturation, color balance, blah, blah, blah. It has a tool called levels and curves. Curves is really important. And so I think we'll just bring that up real quick. So here we are. I'll give this, they say, which is it's a dumb name, but it does do the job. That's a little bit better. And as much as I said there was no color correction needed, there is a little bit of blue on this side here. We did do the color correction, so you know that is what it is. I was going to show you the color curves actually, because this is kind of it's a nice way to break out by individual color. So maybe this is looking maybe a tad blue. You can drag down the blue. Oh, sorry. I got to show you the laptop, don't I? Sorry. I'm already a step ahead. I forgot to switch. Sorry, folks. So let's get back out for the posterity's sake. So under colors and under curves. And Brian Autumn actually showed me how to use some of these tools in Photoshop. And Photoshop has one interesting feature in that you can take a reading of a color, like with an eyedropper or whatever, in this tool, and then you can try to match your curve to that tool. So the Photoshop tool is a little better than this thing, but this works just fine for most of our purposes. So this is where you can kind of drag the high end over and you won't notice so much. And this is what they usually call clipping or whatever. You see the image just turns terrible. And we can always reset so that we mess it up too bad. But this one is looking a little bit blue, so we'll drag the blues down. And where you drag it is important too for what kind of saturation, whether it's light or dark or whatever. So, and you can do multiple points or raise it where it's lighter, etc. So, but generally these things you want to use very carefully and take it very easily and slowly. GIMP also allows you to do multiple undos and whatnot for your process. It gives you this layers feature so that you can put everything in layers, save it there, and it allows you a lot of flexibility. I'm not good at the program yet. I use kind of the basic tools on whatever I've got from there. But for adjusting, this color here, it brought out a lot of these clouds that weren't there before. And similarly, we can work in green. Sometimes Jupiter tends to look green or reddish or greenish or very ruddy brown. And this is a place where you can correct some of that. And also red. If it's looking too blue, you can always boost the red a little bit. Give it a little bit of color, and that will increase your brownish. So maybe that isn't the right spot. That's not the right spot. But just a little bit of adjustment, and that's all they take. These curves tools, they work similarly to the other tool is called levels. And this, you can see this is where the bulk of the image is, and this is where you can do things. Well, this is your auto stretch. That's where that came from. It was basically putting the edge over here. With Planetary, it doesn't work as well. If you have deep sky stuff, playing around with this midpoint and whatnot can enhance or detract. You can see it's just a little different control on what you do with your color. But both of those tools are useful. That's why I mentioned in the presentation. The other ones are kind of some of the filters. Where do we? That's under enhance. And the despeckle and the noise reduction, and the sharpening. Those are the three that I use the most. And the sharpening, I would say this is, again, very similar to the wavelets, except you get to play with the radius. So maybe, I got a 3-pixel radius and I want to sharpen stuff based on that. And I can make a mess of my image if I want. But I can also, dull it or, de-sharpen some areas that are only 3 pixels big, or say, 2.5 maybe. But this is things you can do just to improve little things. And they're going to be very subtle at this point, but this is a tool that allows you to really dig in and get to it. And my OS tool, it doesn't do anything close to this. So the despeckling thing, I do find that that's helpful in getting rid of just some like overall noise. Again, they give you a radius control, block levels, blah, blah, blah. And you can mess around with it some. All this stuff is undoable, so yeah. And this image is really not doing a whole lot of anything, so cancel. And of course, you know, your basic cropping and all that, because maybe you've got a smaller image. This one is reasonably cropped, but you can always do the select and cropping tool, which I'll get in trouble, I know. Size, where did that go? I think that's the, nope. I have terrible troubles with the crop tool on this thing. So you'll have to, I'm not going to mess up the image, how's that? But once you figure out how to use it, there is a marvelously big book on GIMP, and it covers, I think, the version, it's maybe like a half version old at this point in time, but it goes over every single possible thing you could ever do with GIMP, and it's about, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. I can't remember if it's a GIMP Bible or the Book of GIMP, something like that. It's a really good book. Obviously, I have not gone through it. But that's kind of where we're at. And I guess if folks want to take a little bit of a bathroom break or a water break, the next thing is kind of, let's go to tune on Saturn or Mars, or pick out a file and play with it. Kind of do some of this stuff on your own, and between me and the docents, we can kind of raise hands and try to help people through stuff. Or we can skip it and I can go on to the other slides and you can finish out at the end. I hadn't really figured out what was going to be best. But I know Marcus was interested in maybe I'll wait till
we're excited about this because with the FITs, we've in the past been kind of new to digital imaging. So we've taken one image of Jupiter in like different color bands at the best focus possible, and stacked those. We haven't done this yet. And those images typically start out, I think, somewhere in between the rough images that you had and then these really sharp ones. So I'm really excited to see what we can do if we try this.
Yeah. The camera you have is a monochrome?
Yeah, it's a monochrome 1600.
I know there's ways of combining them, and that might be one of the functions of the sequence functionality in Serial, is to combine your red, green, blue images.
We've done that quite a bit, but we haven't done this type of like stacking of one color.
Yeah, the Winju post is interesting. I'll wait till Ken, who's over there? Next to Gary. Wait till he gets back. The Winju post is made basically to derotate. Like say you took images on, you've been taking them for a month, maybe 2 or 3 images every night. In the morning, because obviously we have no jobs to speak of. In the morning, you basically process for the entire day, and maybe 2 of the 3 images you took the previous night are good. Next night, you do the same. You keep imaging and all that. Well, Jupiter has rotated, it's changed its position in the sky and all that. Maybe you took them at different times of day because a cloud was passing. I had problems with that. This program will do all of those alignment things for you and derotate. It can't, I mean, it can only make guesses for the derotating, but if you're doing, basically it's like a secondary stacker of sorts, and you basically feed in all your final images. And then this, you see the center line here, this is how it, will align with the various spots on the planet. So these should be parallel to the clouds, etc. It knows about Jupiter, and it has, you have to download the different ephemeris files for that time of day and whatnot. But once you download those things and it figures out what you're doing and what time you did it at, then it can tell you about where everything is supposed to be, and you'll basically manually find those things. And once you do that, then all of those final images that we all spent hours, producing, they're going to be combined and stacked into a final image, a final image. And you'll find all kinds of amazing detail and sharpness that you didn't have before. And that's what Jupos is. It's beyond the scope of just doing a quick walkthrough, because it's not a quick process. And the documentation is next to non-existent. It's, I don't want to say terrible, because everything is probably in there, but it's written by some kind of PhD guy for his colleagues. But I couldn't make sense of it. So just one of those things. But it is a component, and if you get to the point where you got lots and lots of pictures of Jupiter, they're looking pretty good, or Saturn, or you can do them on any of those things. It's obviously not going to work too well for the deep sky because they're pretty constant. But once you do that, then you can get some really spectacular images. One thing with Jupos is that it relies on naming conventions for your timing. And I know SharpCap and Fire Capture both have a little checkbox. It's rather subtle in some places, but it will help you name your base files in WinJupos format. So one of these formats, whatever here, will happen, and all the timestamps, of course, are in universal time. It's a pain, but that's the way the guy wrote it, and he's got a PhD behind him and research to do it. It is pretty impressive. Unfortunately, it's only a Windows tool. Go back to sorry, Doug. I went on about WinJupos a little bit. But, basically, just a quick review. It's going to be taking your final images, pulling in ephemeris data, and then letting WinJupos do like a secondary stack of these things, and it'll bring out lots and lots of extra detail. That's about what I said. But this is the drawbacks and considerations for it. Is like there's naming conventions that you have to deal with, but it does allow you to collect stuff on any time and date that it's visible, so that it knows about the timestamps with the ephemeris data. It can figure out what the orientation of the planet is supposed to be, and then to rotate your image to say you want to name a certain time, it'll rotate all the images so they would match up at that time. And it might mean that some detail is going to be de-rotated out of your visual range, but what's left, if you have enough images, again, more images is better, and then it'll stack and give you the detail for all of those. And maybe one night it was exceptionally clear and you caught this detail, whereas another night, because of the atmosphere, you caught some other detail that wasn't visible before. And it just kind of equalizes all that. You get kind of the best of situation.
Jeff, take into account the difference between System 1 and System 2 on Jupiter?
What do you mean System 1?
The clouds rotate at different rates on Jupiter.
In 24 hours, it's going to be a big difference.
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly don't know. I would think that I think it'd be hard for them to deal with that, because that's additional data that they have to know about ahead of time, I suppose. But honestly, I don't know. That'd be a good question. Check out at WinJupos.com or something. But it is being actively developed. The last version I checked was in May 24th. So it is being developed continually. It's not being dropped off now, which unfortunately, like Auto Stacker, that is one of those programs that it does an excellent job, but nobody's touched it for probably 10, 15 years. Again, yeah, documentation is mystifying. And if you find there's a ton of tutorials on YouTube. Just look one of those up. You'll find details on it. But the documentation, the formal, is like a white paper of sorts. And the last thing I'm going to show is Auto Stacker, just because it's kind of an amazing program. Discard changes. Get all the stuff. Got it up here. Yeah, with any luck, you'll be able to see it on the screen and the video. Let me get it off the edge there. Get serial out of the way. And my browser here. And the file image. Okay, that's better. Yeah, this is running under Wine. This is a Windows program again. But this is, frankly, it's the best program, period, for stacking Planetary. And as before, we can load up our SAR file. And here, if you're doing stacking of, say you've got a partial image of like a section of the moon or a chunk of the planet someplace, you can do just the surface. But in this case, we've got the whole planet, so we use that. They deal with the background stuff. This noise, they have a couple of different quality estimators. Just use the default, the place delta, or whatever, which they finally defaulted to. They didn't do it for a long time. And then we're going to do you can see it's real easy to tell which step is next. You open it and then you analyze it. And we're just going to do a quick analysis, which it will go through the frames and its quality analysis. And you see the graph. Hey, that looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? What we do at this point, because it does an alignment function, and it tends to be very, very good at it. And you can choose, in this window, you can choose how many alignment points, or the size of the alignment points, sorry. And you'll see if we can place a grid on there. You can see how many points it has. It looks like 888 alignment points. That might be a lot. It might be too. We can try 48 and see what we get. That was only 204. That doesn't seem like quite enough. So we'll go with the 24. And of course you can go up or down. Looks like by some strange number. Like I say, this is an unusual program. Factors in 400 some points. That's probably decent. So once you place this grid, that will basically tell it how to align the various frames and what quality to look for. And this is part of the stacking, and you can actually go through the different frames in here and see how. And you see they've done a little bit of an alignment because it doesn't jump around as much. You notice the green bar in the left window kind of moves with it. So the frames that are later in the capture turned out to be a little better quality. And like we did before, we can do our 15%, which I'm going to stick with simply because we used 15% in the last one. And then there's some drizzling features that tends to not have good effects as you might think. And then we stack it and it goes to town. This is a factor, like I have a faster Linux box, but the video on it is really, really strange. They say this is not too bad. This is a 7-year-old computer. The other one's an 11-year-old computer. So now it creates this fun directory that tells you about the alignment points, and this is a 15 point. And it does give you a fit file. which we have to bring into Serial to do the wavelets on. But if we brought in, and this is, yeah, this is the, come on, go back here. This is the raw stack, get out of the way, thank you. This is the raw stack file from AutoStacker versus the other raw that was up here. Which I can't remember if I installed a Fitz viewer. Nope, but Gimp can see it. Yeah. So to show these two files, obviously they did different things with rotation, but you notice on the Fitz file that Serial generated, the red spot is barely visible. Over here, it's visible and it's getting in color. These cloud stripes are more distinct. The moon is more distinct. AutoStacker, even though it's positively ancient, it does a nice job. And I have no explanation. Whatever magic it does, it seems to do better. The top of the globe here looks better. Oops. Come on. That's got to be wine doing that. But the orientation of the planet is a little messed up, which GIMP can always fix. But this is, I like showing AutoStacker simply because it's like that's the edges of the planet you notice too are a little fuzzier with Serial's image than they are in this one. Oops. Sorry. Where'd it go? What did I do? I got rid again, apparently. You get the idea. And I do have a slide with some good results on that. And this is a side-by-side using the same parameters and all that. And it makes it even clearer. This, like, the moon, for instance, is much more visible. Stripes and all that are just more defined. And it's just the matter of the program. And I've tried with Serial to try to get the same stacking. And it just is not as sharp. It means you got to spend more time in wavelets and you're not going to get as good results. But if you can find a way to emulate your way into Windows or use Windows or emulate your way into Windows, the AutoStacker is worth the effort trying to get it to run.
Your version there is 3.1.4.
Yeah, they do have a 4.0 version out that's in beta.
Oh,
yeah.
Oops.
I back when this laptop was running Windows, it would crash incessantly, and it would usually crash fatally, like blue screen death type. So I don't know what the date of that one was versus this, but I was like, I saw beta, it's like, let's go with version 3. I know it worked. But they're bound to be improving it here and there. It's not set in stone, but I think that beta has been out for quite a while. So do you have a date on that one? I don't know if they put on what date it was. I saw beta and ran. So. Yeah. With that, I think it's the free for all. Try it out Saturn and Mars, and we'll do more of a workshop rather than the joker at the front trying to show you stuff. So, with that, just go to if you want, or we'll call it quits, and everybody say, "Well, this is great." I do not have an evaluation form. You don't need to do that.
You mean other than the fact I already forgot everything so much?
I should mention that I got a PDF of the handout and from the presentation. It's on the Dropbox folder if you want to download it later. And of course, these sample files were generously donated by Ani Hafed. He's one of the Lowbrow super imagers. His stuff is fantastic. So I figured for a class, that would be really good to show. Frankly, his Jupiter file, I think he must have had a hazy day or something, because I was surprised that I could not get it any clearer than I did, even with auto stacker. So it's just one of those things that he must have had a weird day or something. But the Mars and the Saturn images are both excellent, so should get good results with those. But that's why I got the handout, so we don't have to keep a slide up, 2 slides or whatever. And you can go through that. If you want to come up and look at the Bracken book, feel free. This time it's pretty much yours now. So, make myself and I'll volunteer the docents and